thank you so much for joining us, Superintendent.
I appreciate you letting me come in.
So we just saw a segment kind of outlining what kind of the bottom line is for schools when it comes to school safety procedures. It seems like at the end of the day, you need a lockdown procedure, and that's about it. What are you doing out there in Melba? Do you have your lockdown procedure, or did you do a lot more?
Well, I think we have a lot more. While a lockdown meets one safety issue, I mean, there's thousands of safety issues in the schools today, and you know, that covers one particular part, but we work through all kinds of things from mental health issues to try and have counselors available to our kids. You know, we have hired a part-time SRO this year. We partner with Canyon County. So we try to look at all the different aspects of school safety, not just one. But to answer your question, yes, we do have a lockdown procedure.
And you've got a background in school safety. You wrote your dissertation on rural schools and safety issues there. What would be your advice for other rural communities that are looking to tackle this issue?
Well, I think the biggest thing is one, you got to know your community. You got to know what the community is and how it works. And then the second part of that is, what can you do within your own system that, one, you can financially afford, and the other keeps the students safe. As you stated, I did my dissertation on school safety and looked at how students' perceptions affected not only safety, but their grades. And you know, it was pretty overwhelming evidence that when a student feels unsafe, whether it be due to a violent threat or just, you know, having an argument with someone at home or outside the school setting, they're pretty much turned off for the rest of that day towards education. So how do we deal with those issues, you know, and how do you get someone in that can intervene and get them back on track to learning and doing what we want to do in education? And again, I think that's where, you know, having these amazing teachers that we have that can build those relationships and help make that step, you know, to get students back on track, as well as counselors. You know, we have some great counselors, and just being able to help these students get past the everyday issues, let alone the big safety issues that, you know, a lockdown would bring.
Yeah, this seems like a twofold issue. There's the issue of keeping kids safe, but then there's the separate issue of making sure kids feel safe.
Correct.
Because both of those things are going to be very problematic for their education if they're not solved. Do they always work hand in hand? Because some of these things are counterintuitive.
You know, we have a saying kind of that perception is reality. So if people are perceiving a safety issue, whether it's true or whether it's not, they're going to feel unsafe. You know, and so you have to address all those issues and why they might be separate. Sometimes they're one and the same, or making changes to one might cause an issue in the other area. So, you know, again, it's having lots of conversations. We have a couple of safety committees that involve parents and students and teachers, you know, that we have these conversations with, so that when we put policy together or we put something into action, we believe we're going the right direction to best help all students.
Now, you said you just brought on an SRO, you brought on a counselor. How are you affording to pay for those things? And we reached out to a lot of superintendents statewide and said, do you have an SRO? And they said no, some of them, but we'd love one. And it seems like a lot of people were interested in having one of their own, but didn't necessarily have the money for it.
And that's a huge issue. The cost of an SRO is expensive, and we were able to work with Canyon County, and you know, we got a pretty good rate for at least this year, but that funding comes straight out of our fund balance. There's no, you know, there's no set money aside to help with those costs, and you know, they can be very expensive and really almost impossible for some rural school districts. You know, and different counties have different ways that they do it as well. Some counties actually give the schools a resource officer, while other counties, you know, you pay for. And so it just depends on which county you reside in, and I think that's where, if you have a good working relationship, you know, with your local law enforcement, you can come up with something that will work. And so we have a part-time resource officer that actually lives in our community and spends quite a bit of time out there, but it gives that feeling of safety.
Is that going to the perception side, or is that going to the safety side? Because talking to a lot of experts, even technology, even cameras, even locked doors, SROs, they're not always quite as important as just the communications that are happening in a school.
Well, and that's absolutely true. I mean, communication, education is the best thing we can do for any safety aspect. But our resource officer gets out and plays hopscotch with the kids. He's part of our programs. And then on the other side, just a few weeks ago, we had him training staff on on some of our procedures that we do for safety issues. So again, I think it depends on what your requirements are for that SRO. So you get to make those requirements when you hire the SRO, what your expectations are, and the local law enforcement can accept them or not. But we did that, and our resource officer's gone above and beyond. Like I said, he's out there playing with the elementary kids and walking to lunch with the high school kids. So he's seen, he makes a presence, and again, it does generate that feeling of safety.
Well, what we found from kind of investigating this topic is there's not a whole lot of certification or outside of consultation direction from the state. Do you feel like we need more hard and fast guidelines on what needs to be done for school safety? Or do you like the idea of local control and it's just left up to you and your school board?
Well, one of the things that in any state is that school sizes are different. And what works in Meridian doesn't necessarily work in Melba or vice versa. They're just two completely different birds, and so local control is huge. You just got to make sure that you've done the research on, what program you bring in, how it works, how it's going to work for your district. And again, the biggest thing, did you train your staff on it? Do they know what they're supposed to do with it? And can you execute it in a timely manner?
And that's right in your wheelhouse, but not every superintendent or school board has the same expertise that you do.
But there's so many different programs out there. I don't know any superintendents that don't look at research-based stuff and how it best is going to affect their district. I mean, academics and safety are our biggest concerns, and so we spend a lot of time both talking in groups and looking at what are you doing, does this work in your district? We've all had the conversation in the rural districts, do you arm teachers, do you not arm teachers? There's so many different aspects of looking at what safety is, and if you put a lot of rules and regulations in that, how do you regulate all that, right? How do you arm teachers in one district and then not allow it in an urban district, for example? So I think local control still is the best bet in these areas.
And local control, but because obviously like your district has maybe a response time of 30 minutes.
Plus,
Meridian, Boise probably has a response time of 2 minutes. Obviously the same plan can't fit both those school districts. But should there be a bottom line? Should there be something that every school has to have, let's say, this?
Well, I guess you'd have to define what you want safety to be if you're going to do that. And safety can be a lot of different things for a lot of different people. And for kids, it's a lot of different things. Is it a physical threat? Is it a mental threat? Where does safety fall in? So again, you can put a bottom minimum on there, but I think most districts are above that already. They might be all over the place and not have the funding for a resource officer or something else. But I'm sure they've got something in place, to help them with the safety issue.
And you think school districts have all the resources they need right now? Or,
Well,
you could always use a little more money.
You can always use more resources, right? And it would be nice if we were able to fund our resource officer through a line item, for example. So it's not just coming out of a fund balance, which is already pretty strapped. But we felt this last year that in our community, that's what we needed to do, and we worked with the local sheriff's department and found something we could afford this year.
Now, if with your expertise, if you were in charge of the entire state and could implement any program that you wanted to, what would you change when it comes to school safety?
Well, I think one of the biggest thing, again, is education. And, if we can get some mental health programs and get some of that stuff started, we've made a big push over the last few years from the legislature to get new counseling dollars and get people in to help kids. And while that's based on academics as well, the mental health part of it is huge, and trying to help kids just work through problems. I think that's a huge part of it. And so being able to offer more of those opportunities and get some of these people in Melba, we worked with Terry Riley and was able to bring in another counselor for our district. And it's just been a huge success for both parties. because not only do they help us during the school day, but they're also there when we're not in school or other times when those families may need some extra help. And kids need to know that they're loved and that they have relationships and that there's somebody they can turn to, especially in a safety issue, that we can reach out and help. And so I think educating, just continue to educating, still our best defense against safety issues.
And I'll get you out with probably the troubling question that a lot of us are kind of struggling with right now. Have we been doing a great job in Idaho because we haven't had any major violent events in our schools, or have we just gotten lucky?
Well, school shootings on a whole is still a pretty small percentage. There's lots of other issues within school safety, and I don't know that lucky is a word I would ever use in school safety. I think lucky is if something happens and you have very few issues, right? I think we try, again, our two major things are to teach students and keep them safe, and so I don't think that's changed in a long time, and we might not have put as much emphasis on it since about 1999 or when Columbine kind of was a big thing. It changed a lot of views of how we looked at school safety, but I think we work hard to try and keep our students safe. I mean, when students leave their parents, they become our responsibility, and I think we take that very seriously. And we know if they're not feeling safe and feeling like they can do things, they won't learn. So we got to be able to keep them safe and have them feel that way. And it doesn't mean we're successful every time, and I'm sure you can find different pockets throughout the state where some have been incredibly successful and some haven't, and that's with any program that we've implemented.
Well, good luck teaching those kids and keeping them safe, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.